the state of the nation. We just had an election that was highly contentious. They're trying to impeach a president who's no longer a president. There's a large number of people who disagree with that. There's a lot of people calling for the silencing of a certain political class of people. Okay, some of you guys probably have never really, as you enter college, you probably were not very interested in politics to begin with as kids. You're probably more interested in boys and girls. I know I was. I wasn't interested, when I got in the military, I became interested in the presidency and elections, okay? This philosophy class, you have to understand, politics is philosophy applied. That's really what it is. When you hear about political philosophy, we're always asking about, somebody spying on me? Stealing my lecture. Students always record and then they sell it on YouTube, I hear. It's not true, I'm lying. I just think somebody's out there waiting. Anyway, so when I was in the military, I wasn't as interested either. I got interested in this stuff, but it's politics is philosophy applied. It's where we take what you believe about truth, about the world, about ethics and how things ought to be. They talk about the greatest society. What does it mean to be just? Not just as citizens. They want to know what the best regime is. And you're going to find, and we're going to get there after this next book, I just assigned the Apology by Plato, and after that we're moving on to Aristotle. And we're going to start reading the Nicomachean Ethics. And he's going to say the highest science, that word science comes from the Greek word episteme, which means knowledge, to the Latin word, which is scientia, which is what we get science from, which just means knowledge. The highest form of knowledge, he says, is political knowledge. He says, because all humans, all men, which is inclusive of women, are political animals. We are political by nature. What does it mean to be political by nature? You're thinking deeply. Are you like I am? You hear something, you start daydreaming about it? Yeah, it's cool. It's great for long-term memory. You're going to skip all the other stuff I said, but you'll remember that one thing 20 years from now. People are like, how do you remember that? He says, but we're political by nature. What does it mean to be political by nature? It comes from the Greek word, the polis, the P-O-L-I-S, the polis. Minneapolis, Indianapolis, right? Metropolis. Is there any other opolises that we should know? Hear about these megapolises? Acropolis. Yeah. There you go. Has to do with the city. And what is the city? It's the idea that it's the place where people are. We are political by nature in the sense that we gather. We live around each other. Once we live around each other, we have to ask the question, how should we then live? Under what rules shall we govern ourselves? Because we notice that men are not angels. If men were angels, there'd be no need for government. Okay, we're all sinners. We all fall short of the glory of God. And in doing so, sin, when I sin and you sin and you sin and you sin, you know what that means? We sin against each other, we sin against God, and that hurts each other, and thus we need to keep from hurting each other. We need to enforce good behavior, moral behavior. That's why rules exist. It's sad. I mean, I wish we were all angels, but we are not. We are fallen. And so the philosophers of old and today ask, how should we then live? And the big fight over politics often is over the philosophical underpinnings of the government. Not just what we do, where we're going to spend our money. but why we are going to spend our money. How we are going to spend our money. Is it right and just to spend money on abortions? To take your money and give it to abortion clinics after America has killed 64 million babies. 64 million babies. Now, what if you have a religious belief that says that's murder? The unjustified killing of a human, of an innocent human that is murder. And God says, thou shalt not murder. And I shall follow that, and I shall not pay for that. And all of a sudden the government comes to you and says, oh yeah, you will. Oh yeah, you will. And we're going to take your money, and we are going to give it to those who will. All right? Those are philosophical issues. You understand? Then you go, well, it's a moral issue, right? About the nature, which is a metaphysical statement, of humanity, right? And we say it is a scientific fact that all human women are pregnant with human babies. And no woman has ever given birth to something that is non-human.
Well, there was one.
What?
There was one.
She gave birth to a non-human?
She gave birth to God in the form of
Oh, no, but Jesus was fully human. Okay, he's fully human, fully God. Okay? And so, yeah, but that's great that you would say that. That's interesting. Yes, Mary. But yeah, okay, she gives some. Now, of course, let's pretend, which he is fully man, so this is not weird. But it is miraculous in that the conception is miraculous that it did not happen in the normal way, but God did it, right? Okay, so, all right. Point being, when we talk about politics, if you ever hear me get political, it's because that is the result of philosophy, okay? And I want you to know that a lot of what's being spoken about in the news, it all sounds like, oh, this guy's being a jerk, and this guy's being a jerk, and they're being jerks, and they want money. And it's because underneath their being jerks, they have fundamental philosophical beliefs below that, which govern what they think the best regime should be. Is the best regime socialism, where the government controls all the resources, right? And then governs how you use them. You can't own them, but you are governed with how you use them. Or, on the other hand, is a free market, laissez-faire economy based off of the liberty of man, that you guys have the moral fortitude to do that which is right with that which you own. Which one is the better regime? The one that gives you the freedom to own stuff, which you may abuse, okay? Or is it the one where the government regulates everything, which they may abuse? And there are fundamental philosophical differences between the two, and there's a big political fight over that nowadays. And that, by the way, when you read Aristotle, when you read Plato, when you start reading Augustine, and then finally, when you read Augustine a little from the City of God, you ask the question, where's the philosophical, where do we align ourselves politically due to our underlying philosophical positions about reality? Does that make sense to you? So this is one of the things, when I start talking, in which we're going to talk a little bit about knowledge again today, we start talking about knowledge. How do you apply that to the way you live your life? And how do you apply that to the way you believe our society should be? So let's get to talking about epistemology and what we know. We talked about knowledge being justified true belief, right? Now I am going to have you read a thing called the Gettier example. It's called Gettier's counterexamples. It kind of shows that, just by true belief has problems with being knowledge, okay? But for now, we're just going to stick with justified true belief being knowledge. And we talked about justification, correct? If you believe it, if you see it, should you believe it?
Yes.
Always.
No. No. Well,
Okay, so now we got, you say yes, you say no. Okay, look, I believe you're here. Why do I believe you're here? Because I see you.
Yeah.
Is that irrational?
No.
No. Okay. Should I not believe that?
I mean, you should, but I think there are some things that even though you see it, you shouldn't believe it.
Why?
Hallucinations.
How do you know it's hallucination?
I mean, if you see a dancing dog in front of you,
Hey,
standing on two legs and singing,
singing.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're talking.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'd probably look at the glass of water I had been drinking, check my temperature, do something like that. I'd ask you, right?
You see that dog?
I'd ask the duck next to me, hey, that's a joke, get it? And you're really losing. Well, let's take a glass of water here. And I used to do this, I used to bring in water. Became a little hard to do. I put a straw in this thing. And then I do my scientific experiment, right? You go to any book, science book, they talk about the scientific method, right? You set out a hypothesis. My hypothesis is that water bends sticks, right? And then I'm going to set out the parameters of my experiment. I need a glass, I need some water, I need a stick or a straw, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the stick in the water and I'm going to observe. I'm going to write down my observations. After that, I'm going to repeat the experiment. If it's repeatable, it seems to me that my hypothesis was correct, that water does in fact bend sticks, right? I followed the methodology. My methodology gave me the results. I repeated these said results, and so there you go. And you can do it too. It's not just some idiosyncratic experiment. Any one of you can. You're all familiar with it, right? And most of you are going, yeah, but the stick's not bent, right? But my eyes told me it's bent. My eyes told me you're here. I trust that you are here. Am I crazy? Or do you see it too?
The dog?
The bent stick.
Yeah.
You see the bent stick?
Mm-hmm.
That's actually false. What you guys see is chalk on a board, but you get my point. Okay? If you had water there, you'd see it. Now, what's the answer here? Just say the word. We're just waiting for it. Yeah, refraction, of course. What is refraction? It's the bending of light. Wait a minute. So what you're telling me is I'm not seeing a stick, I'm seeing light? Okay. Why did we even come up with the theory of refraction? I didn't come up with it, but I like it. It's because we didn't believe our eyes. We said something is wrong here. Something is wrong. Why? Because I could put my hand in there and I could feel that stick, and that stick or that straw is not feeling bent. Now I can't listen to it. It's not going to give a sound of bentness. I can't smell it. Bentness doesn't have a smell. Is there any other sense that I need? Sight, smell, hear. It's not going to tell me, hey dude, I'm not bent. Right, it's going to do a great accent or something like that. I don't know. Not bent, really. We have competing senses. Our eyes are telling us one thing and our hands are telling us another. What should we believe? Which one should we believe?
Eyes.
So it is bent. You're saying it's not bent.
No.
Wait, get back. Say that again.
No, it's not.
So we should believe our hands in this case.
I mean, in this case, yes, but generally speaking, you should believe your eyes
Why?
more often. Because we have.
How did you determine it? Yeah, here's a real experiment here for us. This is I'm giving you guys. Why should we? It's the underlying What determines what sense we should follow? When your eyes, I'm sorry, I know I'm cutting you off. I apologize. I'm just going to say this and then I'll answer. When your eyes and when your sight and your other senses disagree, who determines which one wins? Go ahead.
Rationality. And like
Reason.
Yeah.
Reason. So this goes back to the debate over from the rationalists, write it down, and the empiricists. See, the rationalists believe that the reason is the best source of justification for knowledge. I said the best, not the only. Does that make sense? Also, the empiricists say, this is a much different one, that the senses are the only. Did you catch that? One says the best, the other says the only. The empiricists or logical positivists say that if you cannot sense it, you cannot know it. Did you get all that? Yeah.
Are those two mutually exclusive?
Yes. Well, no. Yes and no. You cannot be an empiricist and believe that reason is the best source for knowledge, because the empiricist or logical positivist believes that the senses are the only way to know things, okay? The rationalist allows for empirical verification, but believes that reason is the one that is king over, what determines the truth, what is really the best justified. We didn't use our senses to determine which of the senses is correct, did we? Matter of fact, we had to judge between the two senses, and we couldn't use our senses to do that. Those were the ones on trial. Does that make sense to y'all? I used to pull a fast one on my class, because you always get somebody in class who's like the know-it-all, right? And they're like and they're like, and I used to insist that, because I'd bring in the water with the straw, and it was, and I'd show up that they're bent, and the guy'd be like, it's a refraction, man. And I'm like, it's not refraction, the stick's bent. He's like, it's refraction. He gets all mad. I'd hand him the water. I'd take out the stick, and what he found out is I broke the stick in half and glued it back together, broken. I told you it was bent, I believe the theory of refraction, but it has to, that's our use of reason to explain why our senses are not telling us what we want to know. In psychology classes and in philosophy classes, you're going to see gestalts, right? Something you can see, two different ways, right? What is this?
It looks like a duck.
It looks like it doesn't look like a rabbit?
It looks like a bunny.
A bunny. Oh, it looks like a duck. This is a gestalt. It is the duck rabbit. Okay? Here's the distinction between perceiving as versus that. Perceiving as versus that. I want to tell you something. You can perceive that as a bunny. You can perceive it as a duck. One thing you cannot do is perceive that it is a duck or perceive that it is a rabbit, because it is neither. It is merely chalk on a board. Okay? However, when you see the road, and the road looks like it is getting closer at the end, are you perceiving that the road is getting closer at the end? No, you are not. You are perceiving as. The road as. You are perceiving the road as. Now, is the road actually getting smaller? No. Is the stick really bent? No. Is the duck really a rabbit? No. Where is the bend then in the stick, if it is not in the stick?
In our minds.
In your mind is bent?
Well, like our
It's okay,
mind.
dude, I've said it 1,000 times. You're not the first one for me to say that to. It's already pre-programmed. I've done this class 1,000 times, and you're the 1,000th person to say it's in the mind. It's a setup, okay? You know, I'm setting you up for you go, it's in your mind. I go, oh, is your mind bent? I knew it was gonna come. It could have been him, could have been him. Go ahead.
That doesn't. Well,
Where's the perception? So what you're saying now, listen to this, listen to the result of this. What should we gather from this if the bend is in your mind? Are you perceiving the object, or are you perceiving just mental events? Do you have access to the object that you are perceiving, or do you just have a perception of it in your mind, either caused by the object itself, or perhaps you're just a brain in a vat thinking you are perceiving? Well, you definitely are perceiving, thinking there's an object that you are perceiving. This is a flash forward to Descartes. It's a flash forward to the Matrix, but the Matrix stole it from Descartes, right? Question is, where is the bend? Where is the closeness? Right? As the street gets, because it does look smaller, does it not? But it is not. We do a quarter, take a quarter, and if this is not on film or camera, let me know. You can just kind of pan it if you need, okay, if it's still on the board. Take a quarter, right? And you turn it slightly sideways, and you get that. Is a quarter oval? Do you perceive an oval?
Yeah.
Where is the oval at? Is the oval in the quarter, or is the oval in your mind? You point to your face. In your mind? So you don't have access to the quarter, you have access to your mental life, right? Do you know I exist? Do you perceive me? Or do you perceive only that which is in your mind? And if you perceive that which is only in your mind, on what grounds can you tell me that the external world exists and you're not just alone, experiencing the phenomena, the mental images, that we're not all dancing dogs with tutus and talking and ducks, that we're not all hallucinations, that you are not merely a brain in a vat?
Because our senses tell us otherwise. Because we are able to.
Well, that's the problem. Is what are your senses? Are your senses nothing more than merely mental qualia, they'll call it? Phenomena. The visual thing. What if you were a brain in a vat with all these cords hooked up to your brain, and you just, like the Matrix. Have you seen the Matrix? I know it's old to you. It's still new to me. My buddy just got through working on Matrix 4. 4 of them. And they're going to do 2 more, I think. So, how do you know you're not one of those? I mean, your senses are telling you something, are they not? Should you trust them? Can you? Did you go to sleep last night?
I did.
Did you wake up this morning?
I did.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
You're sure you're not dreaming?
Yeah.
Have you ever dreamt and thought you were awake?
No.
Not once.
Never.
Never. Well, you are a unique individual indeed. How many people in here have ever had you're good? You're going, not me. I do. I have some really cool, vivid dreams, and I'm like, man, this seems pretty darn real. I can't believe I went to school today in my pajamas, you know. And you ever had that one? Yeah, me too. I think we all had that one. You've done it, right? And you go, if you can't tell the difference in your dreams, how do you know you're not in one now?
How do you know that's not real life and this is fake?
Yeah. Sometimes I wish that one was the real one. Huh? Have you ever gotten to the fight in your dream and your punches are all like, like chill. Yeah, no. Like, yeah, okay. Why is this not working?
Or when you try to run.
Yeah, I've had that one too. I do believe there is a sense of reason by which we could determine what is the real world fantasy. I'm not going to tell you we live in our mind. I think that's a load of something that I'm not going to shovel onto you. But there are some implications of this. What are some of let's go all the way to politics, right? What are the political implications of not being able to trust your senses? You become skeptical about things. You become skeptical about some of the most normal things in life. And once you become skeptical of knowledge in general, then you get skeptical about moral knowledge. And once you're skeptical about moral knowledge, you say, I don't know what's good and evil. I don't know if evil exists. I can't make any truth claims about good and evil. And then how does that affect your political views? Well, don't tell me what to believe. You're trying to push your moral view through the political system, and I don't buy it. I don't buy morals, so why are you trying to push your morals on me? Does that make sense? And so next thing you know, political parties center around amoral political philosophies, where people are just moral skeptics. And I think that's part of what has happened in our country right now. We're so morally skeptical. In one sense, there's this moral outrage about certain things we do by people who, in general, don't even believe in morals. It's just kind of a weird thing we've found ourselves in. And I could point fingers at particular political parties and political people, but I'm sure you guys could try the shoe on and see if it fits certain political parties or individuals. You could ask, okay? I'm just trying to give you the implications. You do the applications. Okay, so when we get here, this is, by the way, let's give you some names of the things we're talking about here. If I believe that I have direct awareness of the object through my senses, direct, like I see you. The color of your shirt, that orange tiger, is in the shirt, not in my mind. I perceive it directly. Or when I hear your voice, I'm not hearing a mental image of sound in my mind, or touch, tactile sensation, or the olfactory, the smell of this mask, which is pretty clean. I've only been using it a month. It's a joke. It's not my mind, it's directly there. You get it? That's called direct realism. And there are two words that you need to know about it. The direct part says that you have direct awareness of it. The realism part, when I asked you what is epistemic or epistemological realism, the realism part means that the external world actually does exist. You're not in a matrix. You are not a brain in a vat. That the external world exists. Realism, in an epistemological sense, do you know, okay, some of you are going to ask the question, how the heck do you spell epistemological, right? Or can you figure it out? E-P-I-S-T-E-M-O-L-O, logical? You got all that? Perfect spelling every time? It's phonetic. Kind of like phonics is phonetic, it's not. The PH. Phonics would be F-O-N, okay. All right, so realism says that the world exists. Direct realism says you have direct access to it. The colors, the shapes, the sounds are all in the object being perceived. Indirect, that is I-N-D-I-R-E-C-T, indirect, not in space direct, indirect, says that you perceive the object, but you do it with your mental images. And the realism, there's this thing called indirect realism, and that says that that which you perceive is in your mind. But is the key word. The external world does exist, and that's how you come into contact with it to make the image in your mind, whether it be sight, smell, sound, hearing, or whatnot, okay? So indirect realism says the external world does exist, and it does cause the movie in your mind. Okay? If that makes sense to you. You also have mental images in your mind when you dream and all that, yada, 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 but for the day-to-day, part, I see you guys indirectly. Okay, the light hits you, goes through, all the cerebral cortex, and, okay, somehow that works. It's in my mind now. I perceive you indirectly. Direct realism says, I perceive you directly. Indirect realism says, I perceive you indirectly. Yes?
So they work interchangeably or together?
No. What they have in common is they both affirm the existence of the external world. The world that is external to your mind. That I actually exist. I am not merely a figment of your imagination. Okay? Make sense? I am not merely a figment of your imagination. Phenomenalism, and I think we got almost just enough time to close it up after this. Phenomenalism is phenomenalism. Phenomenalism, just write phenomenal and then put ism at the end. Okay, phenomenalism. When I say phenomena, I mean the stuff that you experience mentally, okay? Color, shape, sounds. Once we get to metaphysics, I'll shift. I'm no longer going to call it phenomena. I'll call it qualia, Qualia. Same thing. Okay? I mean the stuff that you experience, the raw data. Okay? Colors, shapes, sounds. Okay, after you perceive, there's this thing called the perceptual hierarchy. First you perceive raw data, right? Simple perception, they call it. Then you perceive it as, and then you perceive that. You perceive it as bent, but you perceive that it's straight. Okay? Even though you perceive it as it's bent, you perceive that it's straight because that has to do with the way it really is. Okay? Phenomenalism is the view, and there are two views of it. First, there's linguistic phenomenalism. Linguistic phenomenalism. If I give you a name and a term, and I tend to, if I define it, there's probably an excellent chance it's on the test. And I know this has been on all probably of my tests for 15 years now, so two types of phenomenalism. Linguistic phenomenalism says, I don't know if the external world exists, but all I can talk about is my perceptions. Linguistic phenomenalism says, I don't know if the external world exists. It's kind of a, throw your hands up in the air, skepticism about the external world, and says, all I can talk about is what I perceive. I took communications class when I was at your age, and they taught me to use what's called I speak. I perceive. I see it this way, right? I think this. Because all you're talking about is your perceptions. You cannot talk about how it really is. You can only talk about your perceptions. Turned out to be kind of a self-centered view, but I think there was some good stuff coming out of it. But nonetheless, I felt like it was kind of loosely based off of this. So, there's another type of phenomenalism. It's called philosophical phenomenalism. Philosophical phenomenalism is the belief that no, the external world does not, in fact, exist at all. You are all that exists. I am just part of your mental phenomena. Okay? You cause me. Your perception, I exist because you perceive me. You do not perceive me because I exist. Okay? That is philosophical phenomenalism. Linguistic phenomenalism says we don't know. We're just going to talk as though that's all we can perceive is our mental life. Does that have a big, profound effect on how we view morals, reality? Absolutely. Again, if morals become nothing more than your subjective perception of things, there's no real right or wrong, there's just your perception of things. There's no external world by which to judge your perceptions, to either be correct or incorrect. Perceptions cannot be wrong. Do you perceive it as a duck? If you say yes, and you're telling the truth, you're not lying to me, you cannot be wrong about that. I cannot be wrong about how I perceive something. I can't be wrong that I perceive it as, but I can be wrong about perceiving that. Phenomenalism gets rid of that portion, okay? Very, very important to how we live our lives. Any questions? You have a question?
What was the last thing you said? That there was no moral world? What?
Well, there's nothing for you to point to external to yourself, say this is a moral reality, if it's all just your perception. If I perceive it as good, then it's good. How could you be wrong if there's no external world that says, no, you're wrong, right? Like if I perceive the road like that, and I say the road's getting closer, you go, no, it isn't, man. Unless it's really getting closer, I'm wrong. But if the road doesn't exist, all that exists is the perception of it, then that's what it is. My perception is reality, and you'll hear that being said by people. Perception is reality. No, it is not. Reality is reality, and you can perceive things wrongly, just like we perceived the glass in the water wrongly. All right? With that being said, have a great, safe day. I invite you all back on Wednesday because there's plenty of seats. All right. Thank you. You guys have a great day.